Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Lethal Sales with Larry and hopefully Brian sooner or later. And tonight we welcome as a co-host the man in the jacket, Mr. Peter Smith. Um, welcome, Peter. I mean, once we introduce the jacket, the show's over. So this week we are continuing with the subject of last week, which is overcoming objections. This is overcoming objections part 2. And who would like to start, Peter or Larry?
I'm going to start. First of all, Brian is going to join us. He's finishing up some training in Colorado. He'll be popping in as soon as he gets a breather. And I want to make it clear why we added Peter Smith, because with all the insanity that we see all around us, the one thing that I believe will overcome everything and save us is a great attitude. And Peter is living proof of that. From the minute Brian and I started the show, Peter has been an advocate. He's been involved. And whatever he does, he brings sincerity and energy. And if anybody's got a better idea than sincerity and energy, you better tell me, because I don't know what they are. So, Peter, we give you the warmest welcome, and we're very, very glad you're here.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. I just want to just put in a quick 2 cents, which is Canadian 2 cents, so it's about half a cent in America. And you know how I said America. I believe in character, and character is doing everything that when no one's watching. As such, you're every single person on this show and every single person I've met through the podcast that we've done together are tremendous people of character. So I am so happy to share screens with you all. I believe that together we have a collective mindset that can make our business better. And I just want to continue that pathway and that thought process. So let's keep going and let's bring all the great topics and the great people to the screen.
Okay. Well, wonderful. We give you the warmest welcome. All right. We really got far afield when we started talking about objections. So if you guys and ladies are okay, let's start with one of the all-time great stop in your track objections. I need to talk to my wife. Now, I've got some very strong thoughts on this, but if everybody doesn't mind, I'm just going to go around the room and get everybody's opinion. We're going to start with our friend Brian Moates, who regretfully has left Repair Pal, a fine company, but is now with Onboardian. So if anybody needs him or wants him, he's the same friendly, engaging guy he ever was. New name, just different zip code, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
So what would you say, Brian, now that you're on the spot? I got to talk to my wife.
For me, and I wasn't a part of last week's conversation. You guys got started then. I mean, objections for me are, from a philosophical perspective, I think objections are great because at least it's not a no. And it opens up conversation. People are willing to have a conversation. The objections are, I'm not ready to make a decision yet, or I don't have enough information. And so from that, it's a matter of gaining more information. So a lot of it is for me, when it comes to, what ultimately can I help you from an information perspective, lead the conversation, with your wife. I mean, a lot of it is look, I think it's incredibly important. You're making a very, very large decision, and ultimately having your wife a part of that decision is a critical piece of your decision making. And so what can I provide you with, or what do you need to lead that conversation?
I'm going to interject, Brian. That was awesome. And then move to the next person. One of the things I do when I do my 2-day training is in between day 1 and day 2, when I've explained how to greet people and how to make eye contact and how to smile, is I send them out to mystery shop, but never to say they want a car, to say they want a car for their sister that just had a baby. And of course, all over the planet, instead of saying, congratulations, muzzle tough, whatever, that's great, boy or girl, is it her first? It's so nice of you. It's always the same thing. They shrug their shoulders. They roll their eyes. Why isn't she here? What's her credit like? Tell her to go look on the internet. It's the same thing with this. all over the planet, salespeople go to their manager and go, "This sucks. He's not here with his wife." How about saying, "Hey, man, it's great. You know your wife a lot better than I do. Is there anything specific she's looking for? Any options, any colors, any models? And by the way, obviously she's busy. You're busy. If you see something you think she would like, not you would like, she would like, you can always take it to her." Durran, if anybody hasn't been paying attention, he's been doing these tremendous things on being cloned, on ideas, objections, and the guy's got to be a master because he's the BDC guy, which means you take a lot of the elements out that are so important: body language, facial expression. So Durran, if there's anybody to turn to that's got some good ideas on how to handle an objection, like I need to talk to my wife, let's hear it. That was a hell of a build.
Dude, how are you going to set me up like that? Like, people are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, what's he going to say?" Well, I always will say this first. A lot of your objections need to be processed early on, right? So if we're asking the right questions early on in the process, we should already know that the spouse isn't going to be there. But if we forgot and they drop this in at the end, then normally what I like to do is use it through the eyes of the spouse. So I would do something like, "Hey, Larry, I get it. Like, that makes sense. And hey, I've got a partner as well too. But I'm sure you know her just as well as anybody in the world. What would she say about this car and the overall experience? What would she say about the price or the payments or whatever ultimately that objection could be?" Because by asking questions, we can identify, is it really the spouse or is it a stall? So that's kind of what I would do, is just dig in, ask some questions, find out, from the spouse, get that hot button. Like, what's your spouse thinking right now? And then if we want to go aggressive, because I know somebody's going to take it on here, get her on the phone, right? What's wrong with using technology? Yeah, somebody's laughing, April. Get your phone out and you can FaceTime. We're all here on video right now. So what's the difference with setting it up the right way and just turning the video process into a purchase process? Or depending on where the customer is, you could go to that person's home, residence, or work. But I would be cautious. It really comes down to the relationship. I hope that helped.
Well, Durran, that was a terrific answer, but I'm slightly disappointed because when I met you in Vegas and you were drunk, you told me you used to have an electric cattle prod and a baseball bat. And they said, "Yeah, let's see if you have to talk to your wife now, sucker." You said it, Durran. I would never say anything controversial on my podcast. We'll get back to that. My man, Zach. Come on, Zach. We know you're too analytical to have a cattle prod or a baseball bat. Straighten out my friend Durran Cage, will you? I got to talk to my wife. And what pearls of wisdom do you have for me, my good and great friend?
No, it's good to see you, Larry. Good to see everybody on here, and so I appreciate that. No, it's funny, and not just to respond, I guess, in the way to line with Brian, but it's the same. It honestly is a lot similar within that. And so, for me, that's where it's like, well, listen, let me do this. I want to make sure that I give you as much information as I possibly can. And so when you do go back and have that conversation, you do have that information that you guys can now be able to make a decision. Because when you go back and you don't have the information of like, what are the finances going to look like? What are my options possibly going to be? And you go talk about it before we really gain all that information, then you're going to have to come back and you have to go back and do that again. And so let me save you some time. What is it you feel like? Because you guys have talked about this before, obviously. You come in, you know what you're looking for, obviously, but I get it. You want to make sure that they're confident and comfortable with it. But what I do is I would recommend you just gaining more information so you guys can have the most effective decision. And so when you do come back, we can move forward. That's all I want to accomplish for you. Because that's typically when it comes to, I want to think about it, or I need to talk to my wife or my spouse first. I'm going to say that usually you're going to get that 7 to 8 times out of 10 before you even get to the numbers. So I think that really is the first thing I really would, I guess, acknowledge more than anything is, when does it come up typically? It typically comes up before the work numbers. And that's typically how we can move that deal forward. And then following that, my suggestion would be, in essence, is like, what would you feel like they would say? Typically that's when I want to think about it, is always most likely going to hold you up from, I don't want to look at numbers today. I don't want to look at my trade and see what that's worth. So how can we progress the deal forward? And typically, what more information you need? Let me give you more ammo.
Zach, let me build on what you're saying. I don't know if you know this about me, other than being a lunatic. I'm also a historian, and one of the reasons, thank God, that both Hitler and Napoleon were defeated. Two reasons: one, they followed the Russians back into Russia in the winter, not a good idea, and two, they fought a war on two fronts. Durran's like, I don't know if you guys ever met Durran in person. He's about 11 feet tall. Right? He calls Minute Bowl Shorty. But Durran, like every other man on earth, is scared to death of his wife. So the wife beats up the husband to go look at a car, and now you're beating up the husband. We got to make him know we're allies. We're not enemies. So, yep, Zach's right. Durran's right. We got my man, Jeff Scherer. Jeff, elucidate and illuminate, man. You just got set up. And by the way, if you're not busy, Jeff, you can see that Zach's dressed all in black. He's going to the Johnny Cash lookalike contest. We want to give him as much support on this program as we can. Go ahead. And you can hum I Walk the Line, Zach, if you want, behind Jeff's commentary. Go ahead, Jeff.
I got you.
Well, to Zach's point, I think, where does it come up in the conversation? If you're kind of down the road and it is decision time, you could do one of two things. You could use the old Shelley Levine, well, great, let's go pick her up together, right? Or something along that, you could say, great, would you like to take the car and show it to her? But you need to validate the decision, because it's an objection. And, if we just try to blow it off and arm wrestle the guy right now for a commitment and stuff too, that's not going to work.
By the way, everybody on this program, keep in mind that objections aren't always objections. And if you spin them around, they can be a path to a sale. I used to love to say to people when they'd say, I'm $9 million flipped, my credit score's at 200. I always love to look them in the eye, smile, and go, man, I would never let something like that stop you from getting what you really want. Let's make every negative into a positive. Man, I'm not buying for 6 years. Great, let's have some fun. 3 hours later, they're signing.
And you say, Larry, you're a smart man, because, I know that this is going to happen without your wife's approval. What do we need to do?
Excuse me. If you're going to say that, Jeff, you better be a divorce lawyer, okay? I mean, I know Springsteen calls himself the boss, but the boss is Mrs. Springsteen. Wait a minute. Is that Jeff Polo I see there looking handsome? Mr. Polo, for anyone that doesn't know, is one of my best friends. He's got, and I hate to say this about my own show, because I could only have the second best show. Him and Ian have the best show that you'll see as a podcast, bar none. And on top of that, Big Muzzle Tough, his daughter is just happily married. Can I ask you a question, my good and great friend? They say to you, I got to talk to my wife. You've heard what Durran said. You heard what Jeff said. You heard what Zach said. Let's the voice of experience and wisdom speak up. What the heck would you say to him? And muzzle tough on your daughter, sir.
Well, thanks, Larry. And by the way, I had to dash down the road and pull into a Tim Hortons just so I could see this, because I've missed too many of these. So it's good to be
for
here.
Anybody that's never been
Peter,
over
what's
the border.
Tim Hortons?
Yeah, for anybody that's never been over the border, these poor bastards don't have Dunkin' Donuts. They got Tim Hortons. And you can't get a damn iced tea. Yeah, how do you keep Larry Feldman away from caffeine? Jeff, I'm sorry. Ever since we've had Peter Smith on, interruptions are constant. Go ahead, Jeff. Peter, tone it down. Go ahead.
Well, I have to tell you, I always have a saying that all Jeffs are super smart. And Jeff, I agree with you. You should have found this out earlier. And my opinion is this. In your initial questions, whatever term you want to use, discovery, qualifying, whatever, you got through that question of, are you alone, who else is involved, et cetera, et cetera. If somebody else is hitting you with later on, I got to speak to my wife, terrific. That's awesome. By the way, earlier on, we did say that you were making the decision yourself. And frankly, I admired you, because there's no way on God's green earth that I would make a decision without my wife. But is it really that you've got a concern with her? Is there something else that maybe we could deal with before we call her? And I don't like it to be that smarmy car salesman thing, because, well, sure, is it the blue? Is it the pink? And you said earlier that. But really, we should be able to deal with that, how we discussed it earlier. Even if he leaves, even if they leave, these days we have other people's wives too. And even if that person does leave, you have a chance to overcome that by just having a nice cooperative conversation with them. And I've always loved to say, look, did you want to speak to her because of me, because of the car? That old thing about, is it because of the color? Cause. But it allows us to find out if this is really a legitimate objection. Yeah, I tried to reach her, etc. We all know that if you say, why don't we try to call her? They're going to go, wait a minute. But it's a way of saying, look, is there anything else that's holding you back? But talking to your wife.
Do you guys see the thread here? If you've been listening carefully, both Zach and Durran, and now Jeff, and now the other Jeff, we got Jeff squared, are all saying that maybe you should have done a little more rapport building earlier on. Maybe, you don't want to wait till the deal's in the ditch. So we're right back to what we always are. It's not so much what you say, it's how well you listen. April, boy, am I glad to see you. Have you got to any part of the book yet?
You know what? I literally I got back from vacation, so I missed part 1 last week. I opened it out of the folder. I have it right here with me to start tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, please let me know what you think. April, I can't think of too many people, again, with a more positive attitude than you. And it's always scary when what runs through your mind is, I wonder how long I'd go to jail if I killed him and buried him in the back of the car lot. But I got to talk to my wife. I got to talk to my husband. What would you say, please?
Well, first of all, that's 2 totally different questions. And here's why. If we know it's statistically proven that 85% of women make the decision, okay? If you're saying, I need to go talk to my husband, if a woman saying, I need to go talk to my husband, I'm telling you, you better get yourself a closer because you have objections you have not overcome. Because a wife would have already gone in, either brought the husband with or already told the husband, I'm going to buy a car today. Here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? Are you okay with this? Women tend to, if they walk into a dealership without their husband, they've already talked to him. So they don't need.
April, can I interject only to agree with you 100%? I love to go around the room once I've beaten up my students a little bit and say, hey, husband comes in with a wife and 2 kids. Who would you give a business card to first? You would be astonished at how many people still say the husband. Man, if you're not dealing with the wife first, your brain needs to be refurbished. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, absolutely. But the point being is that if a woman just needs the final okay, they're going to be at the very end. Yeah, we're good to go. Let's just call him real quick. If not, you just genuinely have not done your job and they're not going to talk to the husband. They're not coming back, period. That's if a woman says, I'm going to talk to my husband. Now, if a husband comes in, like everyone said, we should have known early on during our qualifying questions. Is this vehicle for you? Is this vehicle for somebody else in the household? Are you both going to be driving it? All the questions that we normally ask early on before we even show them a car. And if I find out early on from a husband, if the vehicle's for him, but the wife is part of the decision, I'm already early on going to say to the husband, hey, I know that everything I show you, you're going to be so excited. You're going to want to take this car home right now. To save us all a lot of time and trouble of me trying to tell you how to turn around and go home and sell it to your wife, why don't we go ahead and do a recording of the car? Let's do it together so I can show her all the things that you're going to see at the same time. I'm happy to also record us going through the numbers, and we can just send that over to her. And then maybe she's got a few minutes by the time we're done here to just call her real quick on a FaceTime so we can answer her questions directly. The reason you came to see me, sir, is because I'm the expert to help show you all these things, right? So otherwise we get into that telephone thing where you've got to try to go sell it to her and no harm, not trying to knock your sales ability, but might be better, right? You make a little joke of it, ha ha, and we move forward. That's early on. But even if you didn't catch it early on, you can still do that with the husband at the end. The reality of it is, if he's truly sold, he does need her approval. He does. So you ask him point blank the question, did you guys already talk about this car purchase? Does she know you're here? Let's ask that question first, right? Does she know you're here? If she knows that he's there, they've already talked about it, then getting on the horn and doing a FaceTime is really acceptable behavior. If he showed up because he's one of those guys that likes to go out and drive cars, he maybe didn't talk to her, in which case a random call from the side is not acceptable. That's in those cases where I still think, you can do a little bit of old school, put all the information together, like has already been mentioned, do your best to put your best foot forward, and then make sure that they know that you want to talk to them. You want to talk to the wife. Let me talk to the wife. Can we set up a time tomorrow? Does she take lunch? Like, you do all those things. But for the most part, they know that their husband's there. They just hate going so much that they send them. It's really just a permission call, and no one's better to do that than the salesperson.
Now, one of the things that I love that this is not a Clubhouse call, but a Zoom call, is you also just saw April give a master class on how you talk to somebody. She smiled the whole time. Her tone rose and lowered, so it was never monotone. And it was just clear she's having fun. If you're not having fun, you're never going to make anybody else have fun.
And in that she did a test close too, because by asking those questions, April, you're really checking how committed this guy is, right?
Yep.
Because if it was just BS to blow you off, it's easy to read.
Yep.
I think April and Durran are right on the right track about what to do in that circumstance. April, with your walking around the car, doing a FaceTime, Durran picking up the phone and say, hey, can we talk to you and have a FaceTime? I would also do, if I'm sitting with that customer and gotten through it, yes. Oh, my wife's got to decide. Well, why don't we call her, see if we can go over to the house with the car right now, stop and buy a pizza. I know you have 2 kids at home. She's running crazy. It's dinner time, and we'll bring a pizza.
I like it.
Do what you have to do to get a sale today.
I love it.
I came from a house where my wife never had a choice about cars, being in the industry for 40 years. I brought a car home. Usually it was the 30th of the month when I had to move a specific car. And the only problem I ever had was when I brought a stick home, and she really didn't drive sticks. Could
be ugly. I love it. Hey, we haven't heard from my boy Mike Larkin, and we love him. And as I said it, Mike, it's a handling objection map with video. Love it, Mike. Mike, I got to talk to my wife. What can you add that hasn't already been thrown in? We always appreciate you being on the show, Mike.
I love the idea of a video chat with the wife. But before you get there, when you hear that objection, you're kind of taken back. So you got to take a deep breath. And I always was taught to agree. And I've heard a lot of agreement. So I got to talk to my wife. Hey, I agree, man. Happy wife, happy life. I get it. Okay. And then the disruptor. Okay. Just tell me, share with me, from a scale of 1 to 10, where are you in purchasing this right now? And furthermore, you're at a 7. Okay. What would your wife be? Because you know her better than anyone. What would she be on a scale of 1 to 10? Oh, you said a 7? Let's call her now and see what she says.
Hey, Mike, I don't, I always love to play devil's advocate.
Of course you do.
The only thing dangerous with that is the one thing we hate, and we hate it now more than ever because we're so bad at articulation, is pressure. I think it's just my humble opinion. I could be wrong. It's almost more effective to say, hey, it's so nice to see you. It's so nice for you to come get information for your wife, whether it's for her, for you. If there's anything I can provide, I do it. Again, it might just be me, but like the test and the numbers, I think if you just make it, I'm just here to make you happy, to get you as much information as I can, to make this as easy as possible. And again, you could be right, I could be wrong, I could be right, you could be wrong. And with different people, different things work. But I think in a time where they never liked us anyway, the image of us was always negative. But in a time now where there's so many things flying in our face, the amount of profits, lack of cars, blah, 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 I think more important than ever to just make people feel the beautiful art of pressuring through non-pressure. But I love that, Mike. Hey,
Yeah,
you guys don't,
just to follow up on that, I was thinking of the newlywed game, just make it into a game. What would you say, about her number from 1 to 10? And then that gives the excuse, hey, let's take a minute and call her. Again, it's leading up to what would she say, and you're going to get your answer.
Mike, how long have you been married?
I'm not married. I'm footloose and fancy free.
Then who the hell are you to talk about the news? All right, you're done. You got yanked with the hook. I'm going.
You knew that answer already.
I'm going to Jeff. Yeah, but I like to hear you say that. I'm going to Jeff Polo, who is happily married to Shelley Polo, who might even be nicer to him if that's physically possible. Jeff, the classic. By the way, we're leading up to my It's Too Expensive close, which I think is the best in the universe. But let's make this kind of a lightning round for everybody. I'm too busy. I don't have the time right now. What would you say, Mr. Polo?
No, just kidding. Not a problem at all. Not a problem. I completely understand. I apologize before we talked. I thought you did have time. Please forgive me. It's all my fault. What else can I get you before you've got to go, so you've got all the information you need?
I love
before you say anything, April, I got to tell you something. A, great point. B, you made me realize something. It's been a lot of years before I ever had a woman say, I've got to speak to my husband.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I'd like to add to that, Laird.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is that I remember years and years ago when I was running a Mercedes dealership in Toronto, that
Peter, we just got an alert from the Canadian police that apparently your jacket got loose and bit somebody. I'm just saying. Hopefully it's had its shots. Go ahead.
Oh, come on. It's not animal print. It's actually flowers. So yes, Jeff, you've seen it before. So running the Benz store, one of the things that we talked to people as soon as they came in was, what do they hope to accomplish today? What is your mission today coming to the store? Where do you want to get to? And that was one of the things we asked in the buyer's discovery, and that would eliminate I don't have enough time, because we already knew. But I'm going to say one more thing in the greeting. When we went down to NADA in Dallas, I went to Sewell Cadillac, which we all know who Carl Sewell is, and the book Customers for Life. I wanted to go there because that to me was the very first automotive book I read, and I had to go see Mecca. So when I walked in there, a nice gentleman walked up to me and says, "Welcome to Carl Sewell Cadillac. It will be my pleasure to direct you to the department that you seek today." How do you say, "I'm just looking"? You can't. You're basically succumb to that one question. And
I gotta fill in a gap here, Peter, because Peter told me this story when I first had the chance, was lucky enough to meet him face to face, that being the gentleman that Peter is, he let the guy know that he wasn't a customer, that he was only there because he's in the business and he wanted to see the legendary service. How about the guy? You would have thought he was buying 4 cars, because the guy then walked him all over the store, showed him, gave him a copy of Carl Sewell's book. Yeah.
It gets better than that, Larry. So he allowed me. I just said, I want to take pictures. I want to just enjoy the experience. He said, no problem. He went and got his manager, and his manager took me into his office, said, I got 45 minutes. I'll answer every single question you have, including profitability. Told me everything about the store. I could virtually run the store after that 45-minute session with the manager. And then the manager said, "Do you have the book still?" And I said, "No, I paid it forward and I gave it to someone." He opened up his drawer and handed me his own personal copy.
So hold on. So you talked earlier, somebody prompted you about your post about a dealer that tried to screw everybody and take money from them on false pretenses. And then you flip it around to a guy that built his career and an incredibly successful career on being a gentleman and doing what he was supposed to do. It's heartwarming heartwarming because we hear so many negative things. It's a pleasure to hear such a positive thing.
It's a great thing, and that's the reason why I started what I started, to bring that back to the industry. We have experts.
Peter, I love it. I want to get, because we still got a couple this time. I don't want to go to part 3 this week, but that comment was dynamite. Zach McVicker, I'm a little too busy to take the time now. What would you say to him, my buddy?
Well, what I would say, I don't know if you hear that background music at all or not, but walk the line. No, so
I love it.
Figured like, so no, for me, hey, great. It's an opportunity.
I think Jeff Polo would have rather you play Ring of Fire, but it's just, we're old guys. We like that stuff.
Listen, I can only play one at a time. And so I figured I'd play with that one, but no. So for me, I said, perfect. That's a great opportunity. Allowed me to show you how I am different. So let me do this. Let me ask you a few questions so I can gain some information to send you with, obviously, but also allowing me to dig into a little bit more since you don't have enough time right now. I value time tremendously. And that's, again, if you will allow me the opportunity to show you how I am different, I really would like to respect that. And so we can spend more time later when you do have that. And so, again, I still will try to get them to sit down with me and give me 5-10 minutes, right? Allow me to spend a little bit of time to getting some information so I can either give you some to take away with you or allow me to do some work when you do leave. And so we can reconnect later when you do have more time. But most important piece, I want to go and sit them down still and ask those questions. It's just acknowledging, obviously, that they are busy and that they don't have a lot of time, which typically is there's a lot of cases, right, where customers are saying that because they don't want wrangled in. They don't want to go through this big old, again, it's 6% of car people or car shoppers don't like something about the process. And so acknowledgement, sit them down, continue with that process. And if they are in a hurry, they're going to let you know that. But most of the time you're going to realize they start answering your questions. And then they're going to let you know, hey, you know what? We got a little bit more time. Let's go check that out because you've invested into them. You've shown them that obviously it's important for you to really understand and know what it is that they're looking for and what they're trying to accomplish. And then miraculously, it's funny, they find more time.
Zach, would you agree that if they see something that they really like and they have rapport with the salesperson, those time restraints tend to disappear a little bit, don't they?
100%. But we can't make them bigger than what they are, right? And I think that's the point that I think for us trying to go to it, acknowledge it, still with your process. And if it is real, again, if it's a real thing, then there's something that is going to be more important. But I think that's the most important piece is, can you find something? Can you give them and provide them something that is more valuable, is more important to spend more time with you versus whatever else it was or is.
Give them value. Give them a reason that they want to give you more time. Let's roll with Jeff and April. I like where everybody's brain is tonight. It's a beautiful thing. Jeff, I'm a little too busy now to take the time. What would you say to me, my buddy?
Talking to me?
Well, I already went to Jeff Polo. I don't want him to get.
So I would say, man, I know that's important, and time is one of the few resources we can't get back. So how about if we do this? Let's take 10 minutes. Just let me ask you a few questions, try to determine, the best path, the way you want to go. And then at the end of the 10 minutes, just, I think what was said before, just what would you like to do next? Oh man, I'd like to go take a look at that car now. Right. And you've earned your way into his time because you've respected the fact. But I think if you set the standard up front and you tell him, 10 minutes, that's kind of validating what he said. He's expecting you to try to strong arm him and tell him.
Well, and it's also showing you're listening, because the things that 100%. They hate the most is when you're not listening to them.
100%. And, if you're sincere about it and you say, 10 minutes, how about that? Do you have 10 minutes? And if he doesn't, then, great. Why don't we make an appointment when you have some more time? Because my job is to just help you and give you.
And also, Mr. Customer, if you'd like to give me like an email, I can send you a lot more information that you could look at your convenience. Make it easy. Let's be a big Staples easy button.
It's kind of like when you do the cold call on somebody and you say, man, I just need I can do my pitch for you. You don't use that word, but I can tell you what it's all about in 20 minutes. That's going to be an hour phone call, right? If you do it right. But if you set the expectation at the front, let them decide to continue past 20 minutes, you're in.
I love it. April, are you still with us?
I'm still with you, friend.
Okay. I'm a little too busy now to take the time. What would you look at a smile on her?
Well, okay. First of all, again, this really boils down to when is this objection hitting me? Because the way I've always looked at the process, and this is something that I see more and more we're getting away from it, and I can go into a whole nother segue with digital retailing and websites and all these things. But when I first learned how to sell cars, whether it's the 8 steps, 10 steps, 12 steps, whatever it is, you had the meet and greet, sell yourself, sell the dealership, build rapport. If I spent 90% of the time in those areas, the whole rest of the car deal is done in minutes. It's quick. But that means I've got to spend a lot more time asking questions, et cetera, et cetera. So typically, if a customer truly doesn't have time, like they truly are here, just their goal is to just test drive the car today because Jimmy John's got a soccer game in an hour, there's no way I'm going to get them to the end of a car deal in an hour. Then my goal today is to make them love me and love my dealership and make sure that before they leave, I have an appointment set for them to come back. Okay, that's number one. And that includes, like you said, Larry, the email or a text message. I like to text things because it's a lot easier to text a video. People like text messaging. It just works really, really well. If I'm getting that objection later in the process, then typically I go back to the bullshit button. So similar to a Staples button, we have a bullshit button. If somebody's telling me later in the process that they don't have time, I've done something wrong. 9 times out of 10, I've done something wrong. Either they don't like the number I just showed them. It's way higher than they thought it was going to be based on their own personal calculations before they came in. They don't like something about the car. There is something else that I need to fish out because it's certainly not the time. Every human in the universe complains about how long it takes to buy a car, which means every human in the world knows that it takes hours and hours to come in and buy a car. So if their intent was to come in and buy a car and now suddenly we have a time problem, then I need to fish out the real objection before I let them get out.
Right. I always say, April, you're 100% right, that if anybody on this show, an adult, has a problem, they call the doctor. I call the muscle, I have COVID. But if it's an infant or a dog, it's really scary because we know something's wrong, but they can't articulate it. We can't solve a problem until we know what the problem is. So that kind of discovery is incredible. I love it. Mr. Larkin, what do you think, my buddy? A little too busy. Take the time.
Hey, yeah, I totally respect your time. In the interest of saving time, can I share with you just a little time to show you a little more value or valuable info that I think you're going to love.
Hey, Mike, I don't mean to interrupt you again, but the one thing I haven't heard from everybody on the show who's very smart is how about asking them, how much time do you have? Yeah, I don't want to keep you here 10 seconds more than you need to be here. Do you have 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 5? Because I promise you, I'll fill up the time and won't go a second over. And we all know that, A, you're asking permission, you're being respectful of the time, and if you do it right, they're going to give you a whole lot more time. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah,
I just haven't heard anybody say that.
Yeah, that goes back to what April was saying is fishing out how much time do you have, and also too, spend 10 minutes with me. We're going to ask you some questions, but find out how much time they have. But being less specific is that's kind of a generic. Hey, I don't have too much time with you. Well, you didn't say how much, so I'm going to fish out how much time. But I'm going to answer and agree with you. Hey, I respect your time. And in the interest of saving you time, I'm not going to put a limit to myself because I'm going to add value and valuable info. And you're going to respond, I'm going to respond, hey, I think you're going to love this. And I don't want to put a time limit on that because it might take 10 minutes, With your questions, it might take 15 minutes. So I'm going to leave my answer vague.
Okay. Brian
Here's
Moates,
one
what do you
for you.
think, my buddy?
So what I'm going to add is, especially in what we worked with at Lincoln and Ford in this is, we just talk about B-backs, right? So whatever the objection is, I'm out of time, I got to go to my wife. I mean, one of the things we worked on, especially today, but this is 5 years ago. If you're not using a digital retailing platform now, like AutoFi, Roadster, CarNow, Darwin, I mean, these are all now nearly penny perfect transactional tools, right? Where you can give a deal to a customer when they're walking out. You can send them a text message with the deal of the vehicle that you're on. And we saw at Lincoln, B-backs 1 in 10 went from 1 in 10 to 9 in 10. If you provide, to your point, building on what you were doing with a text message or an email, if you're giving them something of value, we always saw them engage with that deal because we could see, because with AutoFi as well as the other ones, we could see that they engaged with it. We could see they started manipulating it. Well, then they started calling us back. And so we went from 1 in 10 B-backs to 9 in 10 of people because we were giving them something of value. We talked about that a few minutes ago, right? Of value. If they've got to get more information, they got to talk to their wife. They've got a ball game they've got to be at. Always be respectful of that, but give them something of value when they leave. And this is where digital retailing really comes into play. And I know April started to touch on that, and you touched on it a little bit with text message and emails. But like I said, in today's day and age, if you're not leveraging a digital retailing solution, you're pretty much you're out to lunch, in my opinion.
What about this, gentlemen? And April, when someone comes into me and says, I only have 10 minutes, it's a sense of urgency for them to get out of the store. So why not reflect back on a sense of urgency to remain in the store? Like, for example, when we sold BMWs, when we sold Mercedes, we sold even brands like Volvo, the amount of permutations of vehicles out there were significant, and we would nail someone down to a specific vehicle. Oh, I want a blue on tan 5 Series with this, and this. Great. In the country, there's 3 of them. That's the amount of cars that we're dealing with. If you want to order one, it'll be 8 months. So what is your timeline like now? And if you still need to get out of here, that's fantastic. I have no problem with that. But I just want you to know the hardest thing for me to say to you is the car is gone. It's like real estate. It's gone when you're dealing with limited production automobiles. Yeah, and Toyota, Honda, Nissan, all that, it's a much more difficult thing to use. But one of the things is, hey, you know what? We can slow down this process right to almost a stop. If that's the vehicle that you've made your decision on, let's put a deposit on it and let's wait to another day when you have the time. We don't want your money. We just want you to get the right car. And
we don't want you to lose something. It seems like you really want. Harry, do you have something to add to this? Because these points are dynamite.
I think, Peter, that was really good information, what you just said. But I think in today's market, where there is no inventory, it's more urgent than ever to sell the car that day and now. No different than real estate. I just put my house on the market 2 weeks ago on a Saturday night at 10 o'clock. We had 2 calls bargaining who was going to buy the house. It showed you how desperate people are to get items right now. And I think today's market is so different, and it doesn't appear that it's going to change anytime soon, unless you want a Ford EV or Tesla EV right now.
If I could pop in here for a second.
Please.
One thing I've always had great success is, would you be disappointed if it was gone?
Oh, I love that.
Because everybody always hears the story from a crappy salesman that says, well, it's probably going to be sold tomorrow. And then, again, would you be disappointed if it was gone? I wouldn't be. Not a problem at all. So you're okay waiting 19 months for that manual transmission Corolla.
Can I hop back in real quick?
Please.
Okay, so one of the things I just, as you know, is listening to everybody else's is answers is, again, if somebody is coming right out of the gate, like you just shook my hand and your first response to me is that you've only got limited amount of time or 10 minutes to be here, whatever the case may be. First of all, that's the same exact thing as just looking. Okay, that's a customer who's trying to build their out immediately because that's just their wall. That's just their excuse 900 times out of 900 times. Okay. So the first thing is to just, if you want that wall to immediately come down, if it's happening right out of the gate, that's absolutely no problem, Larry. I'm here to help you however long your process takes for you to purchase a vehicle. What was your goal in the 10 minutes that you happen to have today in stopping in? Right?
Well, wait
now
a minute. No, wait a minute, ma'am. I didn't realize you were a car person. I was here to get my meds to keep my mood stabilized.
Well, I'm here for that too. So no problem. No problem. Because I've got funsy stuff for that too, I'm sure. Look, I got a fun little pen. You can't be mad now. Okay. So that's the first thing I want to say. But the other thing I do want to bring up that a couple people touched on was this idea of the car being gone. I have never been screamed at more in the last 3, 4, 5 years from customers who would, no matter how nicely you serve that up, no matter how nicely you say that, if that car is gone, they're yelling at you.
April, many moons ago, we had one of the worst disasters we ever had in this country, 9/11. And Cadillac and General Motors and all the manufacturers decided to help out the dealers, the economy.
0%.
0% on the Escalade. And I'll never forget it. I had a guy and I said, I won't use his name. I'll say, sir, do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Give me a GMAC app. Let me enter it. You're not obligating yourself. But if it's in on this last day of the month, and for God forbid they change the program, you're already locked in. I'm not. You guys say that all the time. April, same deal. The next day he came back in to buy it. The program was off. It was like I was the worst guy on earth. Again, we sometimes have to think for them, through them, with them, because what they do not only isn't in their own self-interest, it isn't in our self-interest. I didn't mean to interrupt you, April. Boy, did that bring back some painful memories.
Yeah, because ultimately you have to earn the right to actually say that, which means the customer has to believe you when you say it. So if I only have 10 minutes, that's usually really just a BS, just looking excuse, in which case I need to de-arm them if I want to move forward, because in that short period of time, if I tell them that car is going to be gone tomorrow, they don't believe me anyway. And even if it is, they're going to be mad at me for it. So I don't find that works really well if I've earned the right to say that, which means I had to actually build a lot more value in the car myself in the dealership first,
April,
no matter what.
You know how mentally unstable I am. I swear I had a guy come in. You know how you read people? And he said, I only have 10 minutes. He said, shit, I only have 10 minutes too. We better hurry. How about I wound up?
I've done that. I've done that. I had a salesperson this one time, and I'll never forget it because she was pretty new, and well, very new, super green. And this guy is like, she comes in from the lot in tears, just crying, just bawling. And I'm like, what is happening? He is just yelling at me. And okay, so come to find out, yeah, he's an old cantankerous feller who probably had a couple beers before he even came to the lot. I mean, let's just be for real. And I go out there and I'm like, why are you giving her a hard time? And, he goes through this whole thing, and I am wholeheartedly believe in mirroring people. So he's like, because all you asshole dealers, you just want to get us inside. I was like, well, fine. Now you got the asshole dealer out here. Now what are we going to do? Yeah. And I just did this thing and mirrored him back. And before long, he's got his arm around me. He's like, I like you. We're going to go buy a car now. And bada bing, bada boom, we had a car deal. And this girl looks at me and she says, how did you do that? Like, I said, it's very, very simple and it takes time. But what you have to do is understand, put yourself in the customer's shoes And then that they will show you how they want to be treated. They will show you based on the way that they're treating you.
But good drivers know you don't steer out to steer out of a skid, you steer into the skid. Because if you go the other way, you completely lose control of the car. And there's nothing wrong with an older guy having some beers. Brian Moates is intoxicated every time he shows up on this show. It's the only reason Zach would hire him.
I thought Zach was intoxicated and Brian is just showing up.
Whoa, Peter.
Strong
you're
synergy.
Your co-host one day, you're taking over. No. Brian's intoxicated. Zach's entering the Johnny Cash lookalike. Get this shit right or write it down, will you?
I love it.
Always.
Can I jump back to Larry's, the first thing about got to talk to the wife? I'll share some I'll make it as quick as I can, but previous life, I ran marketing for the largest marine dealership network in the country. And we actually filmed the showroom and watched how when families came in, because families will come shopping for boats, it's usually not one guy, that same thing. They went right to the husband, shook his hands first. So we trained our team to do just the opposite. Greet the mom first, take care of the kids. We got a play area over here, and put her on the pedestal. And if you wanted to sell her a new boat versus like a brokerage or a used boat, you walked her into the head on the old boat. And as soon as you're going to sell a new boat, she's not going to want something used. But they also call them hull thumpers, not tire kickers, but hull thumpers. And then at the boat shows, they have a thing called whistling gophers, where they walk down. Well, what's a boat like that go for? So anyway, I just thought I'd share a little marine insight. But the women, and we could do a whole show on that, just how important it is to incorporate the women, because
the chief purchasing officer, as our good friend Furnace says.
Perfect.
Jeff and Peter, it's scary. I told you that I send folks out to say they're looking for a car for their sister that just had a baby. And very often, maybe not often enough, I have women who I'm trying to turn into salespeople. And they'll sometimes go with their husband or their boyfriend. And the salespeople will continue to talk to the husband or boyfriend, even after the husband or boyfriend says, listen, it's not for me, it's for her. But again, we're so ingrained with the wrong way to handle women and the wrong way to listen and to pay respect that it's just scary. And it's really hard to get some of these people on the track they need to be, which is to understand that the women absolutely influence 85% of the decisions. They purchase over 50% of the vehicles. To not put them in the position they want, which is to be listened to be respected, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Gosh, this was a pretty quick hour. Can't thank everybody enough. It was such a pleasure to see everybody on the show. I know how busy you all are and how many other things you have going on. Does anybody have any last thoughts or last ideas? Because, gosh, I really, really enjoyed this, and I can't thank you all enough.
You know what, Larry? I think we need to do one last part 3 of this and handle the one major one. The car is too much.
Well, I think I have the best 2 expensive clothes of all time. And I'm sure Jeff Polo and April and Zach and Brian all have dynamite ones. So if it's okay with Rhonda, we're back to the woman being the boss. It's okay with me. Rhonda, you okay if we go with part 3 next week?
Well, okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it.
There was no cussing today, Rhonda. No cussing.
I know. I didn't need my little jar.
Is that Brian Maxwell's influence not being here?
Yeah.
Rhonda, how much
Brian.
is it?
I hope Brian doesn't watch the rerun of this.
Not enough yet to put my granddaughter through college, but we're working on it.
There we go. Listen, everybody, I cannot thank you enough. I promise that next week's show will also be fun and crazy. And anybody that would like to re-participate, please pop in. And if an hour is too long, give us a couple minutes. As soon as I see you pop up, I'll pull on you. We can't thank you enough, and we appreciate every one of you. And Jeff, I hope to see you soon. And April, I can't wait to hear a book review, and thank you all so much.
Good night,
Take
everyone.
care.
Great night.
Thanks,
Thank
Larry.
you.
So long, everybody.
Stay healthy.